I'm 55, I'm retired, and I have no friends. This is a choice some of us make, and unfortunately other times we don't. Have you ever looked around as you age, you're hearing more and more people, those friends from maybe high school or college, and all of a sudden you're hearing probably sad stories about some of them passing, maybe getting ill. It's a sad state. As we age, we hear more and more of that, and we know that our days are numbered on this planet, so we want to live them to the fullest. But there's a reality. While some unfortunately leave that way, and maybe in some cases a little too early, many times a lot of the friends that we've had, we electively choose to maybe not have them in our lives anymore. I mean, think about this for a second. Think of the analogy of going on a flight, a plane. You want to go on a plane ride? Okay, well, they always tell you if you're riding with little ones, they always tell you if there's an issue and the oxygen mask drop, what they tell you is always put your mask on first. Then you can help the other people. See, what that really says is you can't help others until you're able to support yourself first. And so the idea behind that is, how are you supposed to sustain a friendship? How are you sustaining relationships unless you are in a good state of mind or physical health? And see, we're hearing this all the time. Every single time I turn around, it feels as though a week goes by and there's people, unfortunately, falling the wayside, getting ill chronically. People that we were just maybe hanging around with a year ago, possibly friends of ours. But it's more than just the unfortunate reality of life and, the hale, if you will, the healthy life expectancy, or the fact that we may only live to 74, 75, or 76. It goes beyond that, because there are choices that we can all make in our lives. And some of these choices are, who do we want our friends to be? Do we value the friendships? I came from a career that I was involved with people all day long, every single day. I worked with people, whether it was customers, whether it was other organizations that interacted with my company, or whether it was even some of my coworkers, my team. We were with people every single day in, day out. And while I really enjoyed the work early on, as time went on, you find it becomes taxing, wears you out. You get home at the end of the day and you just feel beat down. Quite often, maybe not so much physically, certainly emotionally, mentally. A lot of times it just takes a toll. So you realize as time goes on, and as we get a little older and later in our career, we become a little less tolerant, a little less accepting for those nuances or those deviations, or possibly people that aren't supporting the team or pulling their weight. We just seem to be a little less tolerant. We know our days are numbered. We know those friends that we're hearing about all of a sudden fell ill, and those little birdies, as I call them, those little birdies sit there on our shoulder and whisper in our ears and tell us, wait a minute, this person's not adding any value. They're not supporting you in any single way. And for those of you who know, welcome back to the hustle and welcome back to the grind, everybody. Today we've got another beverage. And again, it's not quite such a beautiful day, but it is what it is. The sun's kind of shining. It's poking its head through, and we're sort of walking with the wind because there is a brisk wind out here this morning too. But really, coming from an electrical background, as a lot of you are aware, I do have that electrical knowledge. And I'm going to drop a little widget here. So I think of friends as sort of related to the electrical system, as it were. I'm the battery. You either charge me up or you drain me down. I have some friends that are battery chargers. They always keep me on high charge. Whether it's on a high charge or whether it's just float charge, the bottom line is they're always keeping me going, whether it's through phone calls, being supportive in great conversations, being there when you need. You reach out with a phone call, hey, I need to talk, let's go have a coffee. And they're there for you. They're willing to help out where you can. And when going gets tough, the tough get going, and that they've got your back, and you'll do the same for them. But then there's those other people. If I'm the battery, and could you imagine wiring up a big, bright, big watt light bulb? As soon as you connect that up to my battery, all of a sudden, the battery drains. It drains it out of you. And see, I like to use that analogy because either you're a battery charger or you're a giant wattage light bulb. And the white light bulb is one of those types of people that generally just sap it out of you. Just no matter what you do, you know they're draining the energy out of you and they're draining any kind of life structure out of you. They're not helping you in any way. And leaving a conversation with some of these people quite often leave you feeling quite drained. It's a sad state, but the sooner you realize that, the sooner you can filter out all the noise in your life and move on to bigger and better things. It's like that airplane conversation. You can't help others unless you're in good a state. But if I'm a drained battery because of all these people draining me because they were a bunch of large watt light bulbs, well, now I'm not in good state. And the next light bulb that really needs my hand, because that's the light bulb to navigate your way through life, all of a sudden that light bulb doesn't work because my battery is so drained. You get that? There's a limited amount of energy in this world. Coming from electrical, I can relate absolutely to what energy means and what it feels like. So the bottom line is, friendship. What really is it? And do I in fact not have any friends? Well, I do have some friends, absolutely. But they're not the friends that we once knew. They're very selective. There's choices. I mean, a lot of the friends that I know, unfortunately, have moved away. And, in some cases, they're just distant because of, family circumstances, jobs. They've had to move away. We all have our lives, our priorities. And for them, that's their version of taking on that oxygen mask. Because now they're supporting themselves. And that's totally recognizable. But those few people that have moved on and have had to look at their own priorities in their own lives, they did it for that reason. They've looked after themselves and their families. And I can definitely appreciate that. But quite honestly, what you're dealing with is you're either going to be in that space, the person that's always willing to take one for the team, or you're not. And as we get older, as we age, as you move on to, you being, by the time you get up to my age and, being 55, you start to recognize the differences between the battery chargers and the high wattage light bulbs. Because when you're young, it all just seems the same. Everybody's laughing and cheering and having a good time and sharing stories. But when things get real, and they do sometimes, for example, I think about, when my parents were ill, I start recognizing who those people were who showed up at my mom's bedside or came out to visit my dad from time to time. I know who those people are. And that to me speaks volumes about who the friends are and who the friends aren't. Because in time of need, when you need somebody there by your side to actually show some support and solidarity, or just be there for a hold a helping hand and offer up a little bit of extra cheer. And if that person's not there, when they've been there every other time, to sort of take from you in some way, whether it's advice, whether it's money. Hey, you got an extra $200. I need a couple $100. I'll slide you some cash next week. You never ever lend money to a friend, because a friend, if they need it, you're just going to do it for them. And coincidentally, the other way around. The expectation isn't payback. The expectation is just, look, I hope you're doing better, and I hope this $200 helps you out. Because there is a reality, and the reality is what I'm starting to find as we age and, we get up there, you're starting to see there are more people, far more people, that just really could not be bothered. I mean, everybody's got their priorities in life, and as I've said, you've got to take care of yourself before you can take care of anybody else. So that is just something we all live with. And that's totally fine. The real question is, how do I feel about not having friends? Again, I have acquaintances. I have people that I chat with. But true friends, push come to shove, when stuff gets real, do I have friends? Well, I probably have one or two that I can really name, which I won't name right now. I do. There are a couple of friends. But large in part, the fact I want to mention is most of these people in your lives are not friends. Most of them are simply acquaintances. And while it's fun to talk and it's fun to meet up with these people, that doesn't mean they're not friendly. It doesn't mean you don't enjoy hanging around. Again, most people are going to prioritize their own issues, their own lives, as many times they should. But, I want to share a little quick story here for you. You see, back quite a few years ago, we were building, we have this little cabin way out in the woods, okay? And I was working on that little cabin. And this goes back about 12 years ago or thereabouts. And, and I was reaching out because I needed a little bit of help. Now, I was out there working on this thing all by myself, day in, day out, week in, week out. It took me a good year, almost every single day, building this place. And by and large, most of it I was working on by myself. But there were times, right? There was times when you needed something heavy lifted, or you needed some support for something. It's a 2 or 3 person job. And you would be surprised how few people, and maybe you wouldn't be, how few people who knew exactly what I needed. I was pretty adamant about, kind of sharing what I was going on with groups of people that I thought or were led to believe were friends of mine, only to find that there was absolutely zero takers, no support anywhere. Even for just a lending hand, even for something that looked like it might only take an evening of somebody's time, I could not get any takers. So then I ended up chatting with one of the friends, and they said, look, you can't expect people to just drop everything and just kind of dump everything willy-nilly and get them to help you with every little thing. And that was a bit of a poke. I'll be honest, that was a little bit of a poke in the eye, because I would help. And I know that any friend of mine who needed a hand with something, see, that's the way I'm wired, and that's the way I was brought up. And, my parents brought me up in that way to help out and be part of a community. You see, I look at some of these communities and, I think about, for example, my wife. Okay, her family and that whole group, they're Portuguese, okay? And I've never seen such a tight community, such a tight-knit community that's always willing to help out each other. When they need something, they help out, they get in there and they just get going on it. And quite often, John will call Joe and Joe will call, they'll just call the whole crew. Next thing you know, you've got 6 Portuguese guys showing up to help with your little job. And I just laugh. And we have had so much of that type of help within the family. But that's family. And family, you know what? You keep family near and dear. Family is everything. Health is everything. Friends, again, acquaintances, what's the difference? Because you would get these situations where you have these small communities coming out to pitch in a hand. And I was so grateful for those moments. But that was my example to the friend who had said, you can't expect people just to drop everything. I said, absolutely, 100%, I get it. No hard feelings, no issues. But it is a learning experience. And that learning experience for me was, I found that there's actually very few people that you can truly rely on. Your family, maybe that 1 or 2 really close friends, which I've said, if you happen to be one of those lucky ones that actually has 1 or 2 friends that would take one for you, those are definitely people you want to help them out. And, it's nice to know that they've got your back too. Because it's harder and harder to find these communities, these people that pull together and help each other out. Rather, most people are prioritizing their lives, prioritizing their situation, everything that they do. Everybody has their life, and there's no fault in that. You have to take care of yourself first and foremost. I absolutely have always said that. You've got to prioritize your health, both physically, mentally, before you can help anybody else. Then, of course, you help out your family, which is what I've been doing for the last year and a half. See, while I've seems to have a lot of my quote unquote friends or acquaintances have sort of drifted off, have more or less departed from my life for the most part, a lot of that I think about is largely in good way, in a good, was a good thing. It was a good result, because you think about this last year and a half, I've needed a lot of time to fix myself, to fix my mental state, my physical state. I've said already, got on the wagon with trying to get in better condition physically, eating a little better, certainly fix the mental state that, and some of the anguish that I was dealing in the corporation that I was working for was no shortage of mind games, no shortages of challenges that just kept you dancing, and you constantly had Big Brother with the thumb on your forehead. After dealing with that for years, it actually took me some time to fix myself, to heal myself. And in doing so, that's essentially the equivalent of grabbing that oxygen mask first. I had to make sure that I was fixed. I had to fix my own internal challenges, physically, mentally, and beyond. Now, I rise above and I pull out on the other end, and I realize that now, absolutely, I'm always willing to help out friends in need. The fact is, though, there's far fewer friends than you'd actually believe. Please do hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to share and like. Hope to see all of you tomorrow. Have a great one, everybody. Bye-bye.